You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hi, I'm Joe Heath.
I'm Toni Heath.
And this is the Watch-A-Thon of Rassilon.
That's true, but you always say it.
Yeah, I say it because it's true.
They know.
Maybe this is the first episode they're listening to.
Oh, hey! Welcome.
Today we're going to be talking about the first serial of the 13th season of Doctor Who, Terror of the Zygons, which consists of 4 episodes that aired from August 30th, 1975 to September 20th, 1975.
True facts!
And I'd like to give a special shout out to Matt Golden for getting us these episodes.
Hey, thanks, Matt.
You can follow him on Tumblr at mgoldentumbles.tumblr.com. And today, we have returning special guest, Nathan Laws of the 42 Cast.
Hello!
How you been doing?
I am doing alright. Just got done playing a 4-day-long D&D game, which is intense, but really fun.
Did you win?
Well, I'm the DM, so I always win. I'm not sure the players had any winning, but, you know, we'll see what happens next year. Next year, they're going to get to the climax of the story, so. This is an annual thing that I do, so, every year at Memorial Day weekend, we do 4 days of D&D, so.
Before we do jump into the serial, it is Zygons.
Yeah?
Which I assumed, because I'd only seen them in New Who, that they're kind of a bigger deal, but apparently this is the only serial with Zygons in Classic Who.
Yeah.
So I thought they were a much more prevalent thing, but I guess not.
They've appeared in some Big Finish audios, and there was actually a softcore porn fan video done with Zygons.
I think I've heard of that, yeah.
What?
Yes, no, I am not making this up. I have... there was a fan video that, from what I understand, is a softcore porno done with Zygons, written by Doctor Who novelist Jonathan Blum, of all people.
Oh wow! Well, if you're gonna, I guess, write it, get the people who know what they're talking about. I vaguely remember hearing about this. I think Scribbles has watched it and talked about it on Tumblr. So,
well, okay.
But let's dive in. Terror of the Zygons, episode 1. Which I have titled Bagpipes and the Brig.
No.
And I believe we have more titles coming.
We have guest titles?
Yes.
My title is Skirting into Danger.
We both focused on the brig for our titles.
That was appropriate.
Because this episode brings back the brig and unit.
Yay.
And your favorite.
Ben.
Yeah, now that Yates is out of the way, Benton, is allowed to shine.
Yeah, even though I'm pretty sure this is the last unit story for a while.
Okay, so here's the thing. There are 2 more unit stories, but since they didn't keep Nicholas Courtney and John Levine under contract, basically they weren't going to wait around for them to just say, oh, hey, we have another unit story. So the next story does not have the Brigadier, but does have Benton, and then the last one doesn't have either one of them, even though they had parts written for them. So they get replaced by people we don't care about, basically.
So Yates?
Joe, the face you just made was so anguished.
I love Benton.
Well, you will get Benton one more time. But the Brig, this is the last time you'll see the Brigadier for a long time. He will come back in the 5th Doctor era, but you won't see him again for a long time.
Another thing about this serial is that it was originally intended to be the finale for last season, and honestly, that makes a lot more sense to me than being the premiere of this season. It does feel like a wrap-up for the previous season, just sort of like bookending what started in Robot.
It is and it isn't, because last season was very much a old hits kind of season. You know, we got the Centaurans and the Daleks and the Cybermen. This is when I feel like the Fourth Doctor's era really starts, because even though we have the callback to Unit, this is kind of like the fascination, and you guys will see this more as you go through it, but Philip Hinchcliffe and Robert Holmes, who were the producer and script editor at this time, like, we're really interested in introducing more horror elements to Doctor Who. And so they mined a lot of old monster movies for their ideas. So this is basically Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you know, as a Doctor Who story. And you'll see as you go through, they're gonna mine lots of different ones. You know, you're gonna get, Frankenstein's monster and, you know, various other things from, you know, going forward. So I feel like this is the start of something.
Yeah, we already sort of had King Kong and Robot, and
I guess.
sort of a precursor to Alien in not Will in Space. What's it called? Ark in Space. So the horror is definitely coming. But this episode 1, there's something in the water. Speaking of hard things, we get this very Scottish guy on a radio thing. You know, that's a technical term.
Sure.
Radio thing. And he's on an oil rig, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he says something about food. I don't remember what, but he was very concerned about food. And then he gets attacked, and the oil rig collapses into the ocean. And he's talking about haggis. That's what he was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Just so that you know
Just
that
so
this
you
is
know.
a very Scottish episode.
And then everything collapses. And then we get Team TARDIS. And
Oh, they're so cute, because Sullivan has the scarf and Sarah Jane has the hat, and that's the cutest thing I've ever seen in my whole life.
Okay, so since I'm a little bit behind because I'm trying to catch up on the show, what are your feelings about Harry Sullivan?
a bit mixed. Like, he's okay sometimes. Sometimes he's a little...
I think he's unfortunately underwritten.
Yeah.
I think he could have been, like, a really good character, and they just never figured out what to do with him. And there are moments where he's genuinely really funny and, like, a really fun character.
And then there's some episodes where you're just like, oh, right, Harry's here.
I forgot he was here.
He existed.
And I think so did the writers.
Right. The Doctor's like, Harry Sullivan is an imbecile.
That was a good one. I mean, that moment. The serial itself was a little whoa, but that moment was great. I liked him in Ark in Space, even though he was occasionally the worst, but the show knew he was the worst, so it was fine.
Right, he's very much supposed to be an old-fashioned guy, but that's supposed to put him up against Sarah Jane, who's very progressive, and so, you know, they kind of butt heads on purpose. He was deliberately written that way.
Yeah, like he kind of reminded me a little bit of Ben from the second Doctor, except Ben didn't have anyone sort of like saying, hey, stop that, necessarily.
He wasn't butting heads with anyone, so he was just saying bad opinions.
Right.
Yeah. So he was kind of just a butthead. But, yeah, and also he was way more funny than Ben. I don't like Ben.
We know. But we know your feelings.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just getting to that now in the podcast.
We upset a handful of people by our disdain for Ben. But yeah, Harry Sullivan, he's got his moments. I never really felt like he became like a full character at any point, though.
I think it's kind of telling that, like, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, Sarah Jane and 4, they're the best Team TARDIS, and it's like always Sarah Jane 4 and Harry Sullivan, and like people just forget.
It was unfortunate because they didn't know who they were going to cast for the fourth Doctor, and they wanted to have somebody around because John Pertwee had been such a physical force on the show that they wanted to make sure they had an actor who could do action. But then they cast Tom Baker, and he was a younger guy, and he could do all the action that they needed, and so they didn't need an action man. And so Harry was kind of left without really a role in the show. And it's unfair to Ian Marter, who is a great guy, and in fact, after this, he wrote for basically novelizations for the show, and he stayed involved and did a lot of convention appearances and stuff like that until he died tragically at a fairly young age, like 10 years after he was off the show. So Ian Marter, yeah, it's really unfortunate because he really understood that he was part of something special with Doctor Who and stayed involved with the show even after he left.
But I've heard that in a couple of like fandoms. Like there's these characters that aren't like the best characters, but they're like the biggest fans, And, like, they go to conventions and they're like, oh man, that person is really, really lovely. I hate his character, though.
Right, I have never heard anything bad about anyone who actually has met Ian Marter in person.
Yeah, he seems like a nice enough guy.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, his character's not amazingly written at times.
He's not given much to do.
Yeah, he just sort of wanders around a lot.
Yeah.
And says, oh dear. But that's what they're doing right now. They're wandering around. What is the Doctor wearing?
It's a Scottish version of his costume. I mean, he's got, like, a tartan and stuff. I mean, not wearing, like, a kilt, but, like, it's a tartan-type fabric that he's wearing for, you know, for his coat. So it's a little bit different than what he normally wears.
He has a new hat, too, right? The little black thing.
I can't think of what those are called.
Hat.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And they wave a car down and get picked up, and it's the, forget his name, the Duke
Of Forgill.
And he takes them to Unit, which is where we get to see Benton.
So happy to be back at Unit.
And then a scene happens that I only half understood because there was loud bagpipes playing during most of it, which is part of the joke, but also I'm like, oh my god, please stop playing the bagpipes. Thankfully, it does end eventually. Because I believe the Brigadier tells Benton, hey, you know the landlord, right? And the landlord is the guy who's playing the bagpipes. And he's like, you get along with him okay, right? And Benton's like, yeah. And he goes like, please, for the love of God, tell him to knock it off. So Benton does that.
And the Brigadier is wearing a kilt.
Much to the Doctor's amusement.
Because as he reminds Sarah Jane, he's a Lethbridge Stewart. He is Scottish. Partially, at least.
And, like, Sarah Jane's just giggling the whole scene. It's really adorable. Sarah Jane does a lot of good stuff in this serial. She seems to be having a good time.
I like that they remember that, oh yeah, she's a journalist, and they have her typing at the typewriter. I don't remember when it is, but at some point in the serial, they actually show her writing. Like writing a story or whatever, and so I kind of liked that.
Yeah, because, like, her first episode, she said she was a journalist 90 times. Between now and then, like, she hasn't had a lot of chance to be journalizing. That's the official verb of being a journalist. So the Duke has come along to complain about people trespassing.
He says that the people from the oil rig have been trespassing on his land.
Cut to person from the oil rig dead in the water. Or at least he looks dead. He's not quite dead yet.
Mostly dead.
But
he's getting there.
He'll be dead later. Don't worry. Spoilers.
Don't worry about it. He's definitely gonna die.
But the break says that oil rigs are being destroyed and that it seems kind of fishy. Harry and Sarah Jane are like, just immediately go into like mission mode. Like, I'll do this and you'll do this and we'll go figure things out. Like, Sarah Jane's gonna go question the landlord, and I don't remember what Harry's gonna do. Harry's gonna do something.
Be forgotten.
Actually, some interesting stuff happens with Harry a little bit later. But while this is happening, the Doctor is just staring at the model of the oil rig. Just hardcore staring, like has tuned everything else out. This is like I feel like the first real serial where like the Doctor seems super alien.
Oh, I was gonna say that. Yes, he is. It's hard to put like my finger on exactly why, but he's just responding to things in like not quite the right way, or like people like scenes are happening and he's like not really in them, and you're like, hello.
And not like in a bad way either, not like in a bad acting way, just in like an interesting sort of
like he's definitely, you can
way.
see gears turning and you know he's plotting and thinking and stuff, but you're also like, what is he thinking? What's happening up there?
Yeah, you can tell Tom Baker is settling into the role and really kind of figured out how he wants to play it.
I like the way he does it. So Sarah Jane does goes and talks to the landlord, who says that he's a bit of a psychic. He's the seventh son of a seventh son, so that gives you superpowers, right?
That's how magic works.
That's how magic works. And he basically starts telling some ghost stories about people who've gone missing in 1922, and then some ate a kid in the 1800s. It's like a couple of twins. One kid returned and never spoke again.
You wonder about that, though, afterwards. It's like, why didn't the Zygons, like, kill that kid, you know? Because it's like, maybe one day he would talk about what he saw, so it's just kind of weird that, you know, it's just like, we'll leave him. When we see how kill-happy they are in this one.
You gotta be merciful every once in a while.
Said like a true villain.
Right.
I was actually thinking of that one episode of Doctor Who, and I can't think of the title of it because it's awful. Because it has, I can't even think of their name. The farting ones.
The Slitheen?
Yes, the Slitheen.
Yes, thank you. I frequently forget what they're called because I blocked the memory of them out.
They're like a recurring villain in Sarah Jane Adventures.
Are they really?
Yeah. Slightly better handled, but not a lot.
They're not great.
There are so many poor decisions that Russell T Davies made that he just doubled down on, and that's one of them.
My farting aliens are great!
Yeah.
So what was your point about the Slitheen?
That's what I was thinking about. They're like, every once in a while you let one go.
Oh, is that in that episode?
Because they fart every once in a while, they let one go?
God damn it!
Oh!
God.
Okay, I got you now. Took me too long. You made a fart joke on our podcast.
I did not intend to. Honest to God. Nothing about that was intentional. I'm actually very upset now.
How dare you? How dare you sully the reputation of our podcast with a fart joke?
Yeah, especially after I just listened to the one where you guys wouldn't stop talking about Sausage Party.
Oh, my apologies.
Oh, that must be the ejaculation of Mondas? Was that the episode?
Yep, that's the one.
We have fun here. Speaking of creepy things, the landlord and Sarah Jane are being watched by the Zygons. We get the classic Doctor Who thing of not showing the creature, just their hands. And they're like touching some controls. And it's awfully gooey and organic, and I don't like it a whole lot.
I don't care for it
I mean, it's good, but it's also gross.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell the production values are also getting better on the show in this period, because the show's getting more popular, they have more money, they're able to spend more on the aliens and the props. I like that the view screen, you can actually see the nerves. Like an eyeball, like going through the little view screen that they watch and stuff like that. You really get that sense that this is like a living thing as much as a machine.
It reminded me of the design of the spaceship and the design of the Zygons themselves. Reminded me a lot of, those like weird boil things from the Three Doctors. Like Omega's henchmen, except better done. But it had that similar sort of like red, pussy, grossness. Yeah. It also reminded me of a movie I saw at the Chattanooga Film Festival recently. I am blanking on the name, but it's basically a movie where a guy just gets addicted to an arcade game. He's like messing with the joysticks and stuff, and he just gets like zones out in the game, and then like his hands start like gooping inside of it, and like he just basically gets swallowed up by the arcade machine, and like the controls of the Zygon spaceship remind me a lot of that. Just weirdly Cronenberg-y, sexual gross. Ugh. Just body horror almost. Slightly less creepy, but still pretty creepy is what they're viewing them through. Is this deer head on a wall?
Oh, with like eyes that are too realistic.
Yeah.
Which is important, but still very creepy looking.
It like looks at me wherever I move.
Yeah, although you would think if they have technology that advanced, they would put the camera behind the eye so that you don't actually have the eyes literally moving. Because that's kind of a giveaway that, oh wait, this is some kind of a camera, because it actually does move.
It works by Scooby-Doo painting logic. But back to the not quite dead, but soon to be dead guy. He gets up out of the ocean, walks to land, and stumbles around and falls down. And Harry is driving by and sees him and rushes out to go help him. And there's also just this very bearded man with a rifle watching them and proceeds to shoot and kill the oil rig guy, and then shoots Harry in the head. And I was like, oh, wow, I kind of knew this was the last serial of Harry Sullivan, but I didn't know they were going to take him out with a head wound.
Yeah, although I do wonder, again, why didn't they just kill him? I mean, not to say that I wanted Harry to die, but just like from the logic of the story perspective, it's like, you don't know if he heard something he shouldn't have. You shot the one guy, why not shoot the other one?
To be fair, they did get him in the head, and that you'd probably be like, oh yeah, We got him.
They didn't know about double taps.
It sounded to me like you're just like, why didn't they just kill him off? Ugh.
Right, yeah. No, I hate Harry. I do. No.
What? Well, we didn't ask you do you like Harry or do you not like Harry?
No, I like Harry okay, but like you guys said, he doesn't get enough to do. And I think he probably works best in Ark in Space because he and Sarah get to play off each other a little bit, and they actually really put his chauvinism against her feminism directly, and that makes it a little more interesting. But in general, it's kind of like, well, Harry's just my other companion, and, you know, either he's with the Doctor the whole time or he's with Sarah the whole time, and he doesn't get, like, his own subplots. So it doesn't help a whole lot.
It doesn't help that Harry's second best episode is Revenge of the Cybermen, which is good for Harry, but, like, not a great serial all around.
Right.
So, yeah, he gets shot in the head. And...
More bagpipes.
Yeah, more bagpipes. The Doctor's working on something. Sarah Jane comes by to tell the Doctor about what the landlord told her, and she's like, he thinks he's psychic. And, like, as soon as she says that, the bagpipe music stops. And then the Doctor's like, that song was a lament for the dead, so...
Sarah Jane has to feel like an asshole for a little bit.
And then I think it's the brig, or some unit person shows up with what looked to me like a giant footprint, but it's really, really deep. So the Doctor makes a cast out of it, and it's actually teeth. It's giant teeth. Fangs. Yeah. So what's that all about, huh? And that's what tore into they got it from the oil rig, right? It was like through concrete or steel or something really strong. Whatever they make oil rigs out of. So Harry, meanwhile, is in the hospital, wakes up and starts trying to talk, but the nurse is
kind of sketchy.
Obviously evil.
No, all nurses in secluded areas are like that. Doesn't matter what movie you're watching, it's always like, okay, she's kind of scary.
She's got like the super slicked back blonde hair and like the just gaunt face and like wide staring eyes. That person doesn't have a good bedside manner. I believe Sarah Jane is there as well.
And Harry starts talking to her, and then the nurse is like, no, calm down. Don't say anything. Rest.
And then snaps his neck. No.
It's not a DC movie.
Take that, Superman. But Sarah Jane goes to call the Doctor and fill him in. She is rudely interrupted by a Zygon that looks a little bit like a Who from Whoville.
It looks like a starfish if it was designed by Dr. Seuss.
It's got that like cute little nose and like mouth thing going on like a Who, but is terrifying. Not quite unlike a Who.
I never would have thought of that until you said it, but now I can't think of anything else with the Zygons.
That's the end of episode 1, and we are now into episode 2, which I have titled The Monster in the Mist.
I titled it, Whoa, Nessie.
Perfect.
A good one.
It's a little too late to say whoa to the horse.
That's right.
That's one of the greatest Doctor Who lines of all time.
That is a fantastic serial.
Yes, it is.
I like your title's better than mine. You can't do it anymore.
Aw. Take my titles and go home.
I didn't know I'd have some good competition here, because I'm looking at the rest of my titles, and it's not looking good.
This is every time.
Hey, when you told me that we were going to have a title off after I had the last one I did, I was excited, so, you know.
I forgot, and
I
didn't bring my A game. I brought my, Z game. Alright, so, the Doctor is, left hanging on the phone, so he goes to check it out, and bumps into Nurse Ratched, who says that Sarah Jane just left. This is weird. And
they're so good at being sneaky, these Zygons.
Yeah, and then they imply Harry escaped through the window, and it's like the dude had a concussion. I don't think he's escaping out the window.
And they're like, well, we should probably go look for Harry or Sarah Jane. And the nurse specifically says, I'm going to go check out over here, and leaves the Doctor alone, which I think is a bad move for a villain.
I think she wanted the Doctor to find Sarah so she could lock him into the thing where she could turn the air off.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, she already had the trap set.
Yeah, because she leaves and the Doctor does that thing that the Doctor always does, where he he's like, I'm gonna go check out over here, and he walks behind a corner, and then he slowly peeks his head around the corner. I don't know why. They do that, like, every other serial, and it's always my favorite thing.
Yeah, because it's a good gag. It's always funny.
It's even better when there's, like, 3 people doing it, and they do boop, boop,
Everyone's
boop.
one lower than the other.
Yeah, that was the Troughton special where all 3 of them would poke their heads around the corner.
We haven't had a good three head poke out in a while. But yeah, he finds Sarah Jane in this room, opens the door, goes in, and is immediately shut in by the Zygon. Starts and turns off the air. Like you said, I just recounted everything you already said. But Harry has been brought on board the Zygon ship, and they sort of just start giving their backstory to Harry, which is, again, a little hard to understand. What is it with Doctor Who and the whispering villains?
Not even just whispering, but like whisper and hissy.
They're trying to do what they can cheaply to make them sound inhuman, so that's a pretty easy one.
Yeah, cool,
Inhuman
but also...
and inaudible.
Yeah, don't have them give exposition.
Villains giving exposition on Doctor Who tends to be one of my least favorite things, like, because either it's like, yeah, they have a weird voice thing where you're like, I'm only catching every third word, or it's the Daleks, and you're just like, oh, please... stop yelling. But yeah, they basically give their backstory, which from what I could gather, they landed centuries ago. They can't return home for some reason.
Their planet blew up, as it does.
Their planet blew up. That'll do it.
I'll do it every time.
And there's like a refugee ship on the way, but before they arrive, they have to make the world ready for, they're going to like Zygon form it to like the conditions they like. What
exactly have they been doing to do that? Just going around killing a couple of people here and there, destroying some oil rigs?
Taking one twin, leaving the other.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what they've been doing all this time, but I mean, it looks like their plan is coming up, and they haven't really done much to do, what they need to do.
They're basically like me working on any project ever. Like, oh shit, it's gonna be due soon? I guess I should start it, huh?
But they do show Harry their ultimate weapon, which they call the ultimate weapon, which is a leftover from Invasion of the Dinosaurs.
Oh, that's why I had a hard time with Benton being like, Loch Ness Monster. I'm like, you've seen dinosaurs, okay? That's not any weirder than that.
You've been to like another dimension.
At a certain point, you gotta just start rolling with things.
But yeah, it's the Loch Ness Monster, you guys. Nessie's in this. Yeah. It's very exciting.
Whoa, Nessie.
Very Scottish episode.
But at this point, we both mostly just see it. Like, they show it on the camera, and it's like just sliding past the camera, and it's huge, and you don't
the way you expect to see the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
But what I will say, even though we made the Invasion of the Dinosaurs reference, is that Nessie looks way better than any of the dinosaurs did in that one.
That's fair. I mean, it doesn't look amazing.
Right, but it looks better than those did, because those looked awful. The poor Invasion of the Dinosaurs was such a great story, let down by those awful dinosaurs.
It really is. Like, that's one of my favorite Third Doctor serials.
It bums me out, too, that, like, that's what people remember about it. That's the one with the shitty dinosaurs, and you're like, yes, but also, it's a really good story. It's a really good serial.
This one, the Nessie, to me, kind of looks like if the dinosaurs from Invasion of the Dinosaurs had been done in the style of the Drashigs.
Nessie looks to me like an overgrown puppy. It looks so cute. It doesn't look threatening like it should.
There's even one point where it, like, turns to the camera, like, turns its head to the side so it's looking right at the camera, and then winks. I have a gif of that. And it's just like, Nessie's flirting with me.
It's the dream.
Date your local cryptid. Okay, so Nessie, again, this was hard for me to understand because of the way they whisper talked.
This wouldn't be such a problem if you weren't so against subtitles, by the way.
Well, we didn't have subtitles for this.
I'm just saying. Fight me.
Although I will say this, the subtitles on the Doctor Who DVDs aren't really that great, because it doesn't seem like they actually have a script. They're just typing off of what they hear.
Oh, no.
Oh.
So there have been times, like, where, especially in the first Doctor, because I usually put on subtitles for movies and stuff, just so that I can have the volume lower and still know what people are saying. With Doctor Who, I tried doing that, but when I kept spotting errors, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore because what they're typing up is not what's being said there.
From what I can gather, without subtitles or the ability to understand them. Somehow, okay, so the Nessie is Zygon? A Zygon, like from the Zygons?
Yeah, they said that they survive on its lactic fluid. So they drink Nessie milk.
Okay. Because they said if it dies, then they die. And they've only got one, I imagine. Also, does that come back up in, like, New Who when they bring back the Zygons? Are they drinking Nessie milk?
They've got a system now.
It's no weirder than what Luke Skywalker is drinking in The Last Jedi, so...
I'll tell you, that moment in The Last Jedi is what sold me on the movie.
I mean, you're not wrong. At that moment, you're like, all right, they're not afraid to do some weird-ass shit, so let's watch this movie.
Just the face he makes when he does it. Man should have won an Oscar for that movie. Anyway, Doctor Who. So if it dies, they die. But I don't want him to kill Nessie. I like Nessie. And but it's almost indestructible, so, hey.
Right, because, the implication is that it's like a natural creature on their world, but they've turned it into a cyborg version of it, so it's, like, armor-plated and such.
So, meanwhile, with the Doctor and Sarah Jane, in the room with no air, she starts freaking out, so the Doctor hypnotizes her, so she'll, like, zone out and not use so much air. I get that, but why afterwards does he make that weird Invasion of the Body Snatchers face? The guy from Fury from the Deep that he opens his mouth real wide and just goes and like, why? Why does he do that?
Because Tom Baker decided that to play an alien, he had to act really weird.
It terrified me slightly because I had flashbacks of Fury from the Deep. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I know what you're talking about, because I know it still haunts you to this day.
Mr. Oak and Mr. Quill.
Nothing has scared me in the history of Doctor Who more than that scene.
Which is funny, because most of that one is missing, but we just have the censor clip of them doing their breathing.
Yeah, somebody didn't do their job right. They should have burnt that forever.
Just that scene should be missing.
Why is that the only thing that exists?
Also, he is not exaggerating. He had multiple nightmares after we watched that episode.
It's terrifying. So I don't need the Doctor doing it too, alright? It's not cool.
You okay?
Yeah. So then the unit headquarters starts filling up with gas.
And I love that the Brigadier runs towards the gas. It's like, shouldn't you be running away from the gas?
He's gonna fight it.
Right, I know. It's like, maybe I can shoot it.
And I like the one unit soldier who notices it first and just goes, hey!
He's with unit. He's been gassed a time or two. He's seen Stranger Things.
Season 1 or 2? Both? Yeah, of course, the gas knocks them out. And then Benton meanwhile, has found the Doctor and sort of wakes him up from his Tibetan monk breathing. And then he has to wake up Sarah Jane. But he has to be very careful about it, because she's in a trance or whatever.
Do you know the Ninja Turtles get out of that same cliffhanger that same way?
Yeah?
Only they're in space.
So you're saying the Ninja Turtles ripped off Doctor Who?
Yeah, sure.
Or just a common storytelling trope?
I love how we've brought everything from Sausage Party to Ninja Turtles into this discussion of this episode.
I guarantee you, by the end of it, there'll at least be a Farscape reference somewhere.
Oh, at least one, or I'm not paying attention.
That one doesn't count. So then we actually get to see Nessie in the mist chasing down this one random unit soldier, and it basically stomps the guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because later they go to where the guy is dead and they don't show it, but you see Benton's reaction to looking at it, like, ugh.
He's like, ugh, it's bad luck just seeing a thing like that. The Zygon continues the tour with Harry and says that they need his body print. Harry's like, what are you talking about? And the Zygon turns into the Beardy Man. I don't think does that guy ever have a name?
No.
They just call him the Caper, which is apparently a Gaelic word. I don't know what it means.
Yeah, because he's like later, like sort of like a butler-esque role, sort of. But yeah, he's got a big old bushy beard, so he's beardy. And that's the guy that, shot Harry. So, and the Doctor is, meanwhile, sort of figuring everything out. Nessie, okay, so it's making a mating call?
No, the homing beacon that Nessie goes to is making a mating call.
Gotcha, right. So the little beacon thing that, like, the Zygons put it somewhere and then Nessie attacks it. Because Nessie's just constantly horny, I guess.
Well, if it's been, 1,000 years and you haven't seen another of your kind, I guess you would be.
That's true. It would be terrible if they're like, we have this evil plan, we're gonna have Nessie destroy something, and then it's just like, Nessie's like, I'm not in the mood.
I've got a headache.
What do you do in that situation?
Not destroy an oil rig.
The brig finally wakes up from his nap. His gas-induced nap. So what was the purpose of gassing everybody?
So they wouldn't see when Nessie walked over land, which seems like pretty flimsy. But
why not just kill him? You immediately be like, what was the purpose behind that? We need to figure it out so we can go stop you. So again, make that gas a little more lethal. I'm tired of telling these villains how to operate.
If only they watched Doctor Who.
The Zygons are watching in, and this is where they see that Sarah Jane is alone, and they're like, great. And she's typing up her article, which is like something like, Scotland, is it the new Bermuda Triangle?
And that's when you realize that the magazine that Sarah Jane writes for is like the British version of the Inquirer.
It could be legit, and then she just keeps sending them this stuff, and they're like, oh my god, again? We can't print this stuff.
She's their molder.
Is Queen Elizabeth really a werewolf?
Find out on page 3. So, Harry Sullivan, in quotation marks, shows up and grabs the mating call thing.
So here's where I have a question for you guys. Did you get the impression that when the Zygons copy somebody, that they get the memories or not?
It seemed like...
I think they get at least like a basic.
Yeah, like there were some things that were like that they could access, but not enough.
I think they get like all the memories, but not the personality.
Right, and that's the thing, because here's my issue with it. Because everyone else that the Zygons take the place of, like the nurse obviously has to be able to do some real medical care. The Duke needs to know what he's doing to be able to pass himself off as the Duke. Yeah, they don't act like, they act odd, but they need to know everything. So that means when the one copied Harry, he should have known everything about the TARDIS and all that stuff. Why didn't he tell them, oh, by the way, the Doctor's an alien and he has a time machine?
It could be that they know those things, though, because they, studied before they took those people. Mm-hmm. Like, they did the research before. And, with Harry Sullivan, it was like, we'll just do this one real quick. And, didn't get any of the info beforehand.
Harry, when he does get the piece, he does say he's getting it for the Doctor. The Doctor told him to get it. So he at least... Have they bumped into the Doctor? Yeah, they've seen the Doctor on the deer camera.
Oh yeah, my other favorite thing is the Doctor, when he's discussing whether or not they're being bugged, he goes into a loud whisper. And I'm like, I'm sorry, if you're being bugged, they're still gonna pick that up. I think we're being bugged, Brigadier.
My favorite part of that is, he doesn't say that they're being bugged immediately, because the Brigadier does it. The Brigadier says that they're being bugged. And then the Doctor goes, shh, bugged. He doesn't care that he's being loud. He just wants to be the one who said it. But yeah, evil Harry gets the piece, says a basic excuse, and Sarah Jane's like, no, wait, what? And tries to follow him, and he just shoves her down. He doesn't even try very hard.
Maybe this is just one Zygon who's not great at his job.
Zygon Carl. Ugh.
It's been a long day, and he just wants to get home and put his squelchy feet up. He can't be bothered with, pretending.
We also know the Zygons don't really like being inside humans. And, this one's Harry Sullivan, so it's a double whammy.
They don't like being inside humans, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Are we getting into that fan video now?
No, from Big Finish. Sorry, they don't like being humans.
1-800-Zygon.
They can be anyone for a price. Okay, so a sort of chase scene happens. Not a very exciting one. There's a lot of shots of running around. Sarah Jane chases Harry. Then she goes back and gets the unit people. Then they all start chasing Harry. But she's the only one who finds Harry, so I'm not entirely certain why she had to go back and get unit.
They were running about a minute short, so they decided to add in
there you go.
Sarah running back to get the unit people.
Because Harry runs into a barn. And Sarah Jane follows him. And there's this scene inside the barn is actually, I think, really well shot. It's creepy because he's hiding behind a bale of hay, and it's just he's in the shadows, and it's slowly zooming in on his face. It's really creepy. And then they're on top of some bales of hay, and he starts swinging at Sarah Jane with a pitchfork, and then misses and falls off. Zygon Carl.
And ends up impaling himself, which I don't know how he both fell off and managed to impale himself, but he did.
It's just a really off day.
And then he turns back into a Zygon and makes cow noises, right?
Makes cow noises.
It's not very happy. That's what a cow does, right? Not like a happy cow.
You know, of all the sounds I could have thought of, that the cow would not have been what I compared that to, but okay.
Not a happy cow. A cow that's impaled itself. And is dying. That kind of cow.
Yeah, that's dead on Zygon. But Sarah Jane rushes to go get the unit people to come look at the body. Be like, hey, look, there's an alien. But these Zygons zap him away before she can show the unit people. And it's at this point that the doctor realizes that it's the piece is what's calling Nessie, basically. And runs off with it. Gets in a car and he's like, I'm going to lead it far away.
I like the discussion of that plan where he's like, we don't know that you're faster than it. He's like, you don't know that I'm not? And then just runs off.
And the Brigadier's so cute talking about setting up machine guns around around the village where they're at. And the Doctor's like, yeah, that's not going to work.
That's literally never works.
It's like, oh, Brigadier, you still think guns will do something.
I have a comment about that at the end of episode 4, but I'll save it for later.
That's just like a tease.
It's a teaser, yeah. So, but the Doctor drives off in the unit truck, and it breaks down because, of course, it does, because unit stuff is crap.
I feel like they don't have enough gas ever. I feel like they run out of gas all the time.
Budget cuts.
And so he starts running on foot. That's when we really fully see Nessie for like the first time in action.
And it is very cute.
Claymation monster.
The piece, the mating call thing is like sticking to the Doctor too. Like he can't get rid of it. It's just some days you can't get rid of a mating call Zygon thing. And Nessie shows up and goes, "Rawr!" And that's the cliffhanger.
Makes baby cow noises.
Yeah, baby cow. "Rawr!" I'm very good at animal noises. And that's the end of episode 2. We are now into episode 3, which I have called The Mess of Loch Ness.
All right, mine is Put Up Your Dukes.
Oh, nice.
There's just like a little bit of like jealousy in that.
Just a little bit. But also I really enjoy it because no one else does it except Vince. And Vince gets real competitive with it. Because he's like, I say mine and he immediately goes, no, that's not it.
Now let me tell you the good one.
And he's only right sometimes.
All right, well, Talons of Wang Chiang, you bring your A game.
We'll see. I'll try. All right. So this episode, the Doctor just sort of sidesteps it, and it crushes the piece and not the Doctor. And then the Zygons are like, "Oh, well, we've lost the thing, so I guess he must be dead. Job done. Mission accomplished. Let's take a break, boys." They use that piece to get the Nessie to destroy things. Do they have more than one piece?
That's what I'm guessing.
Okay, good, because I imagine it must be difficult to be like, destroy this thing, and then they have to go find the thing and all the wreckage.
They gotta go back.
Got a room full of them.
Yeah, they must have another one, because this one's been destroyed and they use one later on. Well, Benton is, meanwhile, since they've discovered that there's a bug, Benton is sort of
rifling through
everything, saying that there's a bug, and the landlord is like, this place is really clean. What are you talking about? There's no bugs.
It's such a trivial gag, but I love it.
Comedy. But it's not really a bug, it's a deer. Dun dun dun.
The deer makes me insanely uncomfortable. The cameras are it looks like glass eyes. And like you said, they move like Scooby-Doo ways. Yeah. And I don't know. Something about it just looks awful. It doesn't look like it's an actual deer head.
It's not.
I mean, it looks like it was designed by somebody who had a rough idea of what a deer should look like. So, A+ props. Way to go.
It's a clue.
But it makes me deeply uncomfortable.
Oh, and it was also previously established that the deer head was brought in by the Duke.
Yeah.
So there's clues afoot. But the Brig and Sarah Jane find the Doctor. The Doctor waves them down. And then the doctor comes up and says, hey, it's the Loch Ness Monster, and it's also a cyborg.
They've made it stronger since they're really reliant on it.
Yeah, it's the bionic Loch Ness Monster.
That's another good title.
They can rebuild it. They have the technology.
The $6 million Nessie. So they're like, let's go visit the Duke. I don't really remember why the doctor wants to visit the Duke.
He has a library one, but that's not why he goes there.
I just remember him going, let's go see the Duke. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly. Yeah, he's not suspicious yet. And yeah, I'm trying to remember too, because yeah, once they're there, they see all the books and they say, oh, maybe we can research the Loch Ness Monster here.
Maybe they just think he's smart, so they'll go figure it out. Yeah, I don't remember.
I know there's a reason.
Are they trying to get some help or something? Like, because he's like the local, he's the guy who runs the local area. Like, are they trying to get support for UNIT or something? I can't remember.
Reasons.
But what I will talk about in the Duke's office, and I don't know if you guys noticed it, but one of the statues in the back near the doors looks like a Centauran.
Really?
I did not notice.
It bugs me every time I look at it, because I'm like, was this a joke by the prop people? Because that does not look like a knight in armor. That looks like a Centauran.
I need to rewatch it and look out for that. I did notice a suit of armor, but I didn't notice one that looked like the Centaurans. Or if it did, I just wasn't paying attention.
I think there's one on each side of the door, and it's the one on the right of the TV screen, which would be the left of the people walking through the door. Every time, my eyes are just drawn to it, and I'm like, that looks just like a Centauran. And
it probably is.
The doctor just stares at it at one point, too, and doesn't say anything, doesn't comment, but there's like one little bit, where the doctor's just staring at it. And I'm like, is this some sort of a joke or a gag that they're doing? I don't know.
I mean, it's not like they don't reuse stuff, because they definitely used an Ice Warrior in the Genesis the Daleks.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used the chest of the Ice Warrior for one of the mutants, yep.
And the Seal of Rassilon is all over Revenge of the Cybermen.
Shh! They hadn't decided that's what it was yet.
It was driving me crazy when we watched it, because I was like, oh, we've gotten to it. We're here. Our namesake has arrived.
The fan theories about Time Lord involvement in Voga, there have been so many, crazy theories, but the real reason is just that they thought it was a pretty design and they used it there, and then they used it again in a Gallifrey story, and there you go.
Apparently it's also in a Blake 7 episode, so...
Oh, yeah, they were always recycling props between Blake 7 and Doctor Who.
And it's all in the head of a child with a snow globe and St. Elsewhere. So, but when they get to the Duke's castle, the doctor they just go in. They don't really knock or anything. They just go in, and the doctor just props himself up behind the desk, makes himself at home.
And basically mocks the Duke. He says what the Duke said earlier. He's like, my family has ruled this area for 8 generations. Not that matters these days. And it's like, dude, I mean, you just want to piss people off. Because, of course, the Duke walks in while he's doing the impression.
Of course. That's how you do it. He's standing right behind me, isn't he? That's what it was. But they sort of say, hey, there's a Loch Ness Monster. What do you know? Meanwhile, the landlord is as freaked out by the deer head as I am.
Because he finally sees its eyes move, while he's walking around, and he knows something's up.
And then, the Zygons know that it's been discovered, basically, and they send somebody to, get the cameras before, anyone else can?
Well, the nurse shows up.
But they take the eyes out of it, and now it's worse. Now it's just got holes.
The logic seems to be if they find the cameras in the deer head, they'll know the Duke is one of us. But it's but if people find the eyes missing from the deer head, they're not going to be able to put 2 and 2 together that was where the cameras were and that the Duke is a Zygon. I mean, it doesn't work.
These Zygons don't seem too smart. But, the Zygon... the nurse comes up and she straight up strangles the landlord to death and removes the eyes.
Poor Angus. Another Scottish name to make sure that you know that it's in Scotland.
And we also find out that Nessie has been traveling by an underground river from... it's Loch Ness. Yeah,
because Loch Ness is landlocked, so they tried to explain how does it get to the ocean from being in the loch.
Reasons.
I like that the doctor's, explaining this, and, the Brig's not buying it. And he's like, look, just 'cause, okay? We're doing a Loch Ness episode. Just shush.
So, Benton finds the dead landlord and sort of goes out and starts looking for the Zygon, and they're, hunting through the woods. And I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but it had like a very, like, because you just sort of see the Zygon in the distance going through the woods, and it looks an awful lot like, that classic footage of Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that was like an intentional homage or not, but it certainly looked like it. Everything in the woods there is nicely sort of creepy. That's because then the nurse just sort of wanders out of the woods with like just blood on her arm.
I love the unit soldier. It's just like, well, first of all, they're like, oh, well, maybe we hadn't told him that these things can change. So first of all, it's like, okay, seriously? You don't tell everybody in the group that that's what you're up against? But second of all, this woman has blood coming down her arm with one hand behind her back. You don't find that suspicious at all? I'm just gonna bend over so I can't see your arm left so you can crack me over the head with a rock.
So, Zygons and unit, not too bright.
It's really just a fight between two kindergartners.
But I do like the shot of the nurse coming out of the woods, because it's like unsettling. It's just such a bizarre juxtaposition of things.
Yeah.
Like, just, there's a nurse in the woods, like, with a bloody arm, casually walking. It's just so weird.
It's creepy.
Yeah, and she's really creepy anyway.
And I love Doctor Who.
No shit.
It's a good thing. Otherwise, this podcast would be weird.
The hate watching of Rassilon.
Oh, there probably are podcasts like that. So, the Doctor, I believe the Brig, they're going to leave and go check out Zygon stuff. And Sarah Jane's going to stay and look at the books and try to figure
do a little bit of research.
Yeah, do a little bit of research. Which, is a bad move. Because they go back to the thing and see the eyeless deer and realize, oh no, the deer is bad and from the Duke, so the Duke must be bad. And oh no, we left Sarah there with the Duke. But to be fair, the Duke isn't really doing much to take advantage of this situation. In fact, they're being a little helpful, because he gets, like, the beardy guy to, like, get Sarah Jane a ladder so she can get higher books, which I believe unlocks. She pulls a book out and it, like, opens a secret door.
Yes.
You'd think they'd watch her more carefully for that, because how do you know she's not going to grab that book?
Especially considering you gave her a ladder to reach it. So she goes in the secret passage. She does a little bit of business with some sliding doors. She's a little confused by it. She's just, like, bouncing back and forth between them, like, trying to figure it out. She gets it figured out, and she, like, does a little nod at it, like, got it.
I think at first she wasn't sure that it hadn't just, like, locked.
Right.
She needed to make sure that it would open back up.
It was a good little scene. It was a good little piece of business.
It's a nice little piece of business.
Just going from one room to another. Great stuff. I love Doctor Who. But she finds the Zygon people chamber thing where they keep the bodies.
I don't think I've mentioned it, but the lighting in the, like, Zygon area is great. It's all red and green. Like, in addition to being all organic and slimy and gross, the lighting is really good.
Well, and kind of dim, too, so it makes it look even creepier, like you're looking at the inside of a body.
Ew. Yeah.
Also, all the people inside the chamber, like, there's a thing coming down over their face, but you can see their bodies, and for some reason, they all just, like, hold their hands straight up, like, in front of them, like a policeman just said, freeze, and they stick their hands up. They're all doing that pose. That's how I describe things on a podcast.
Thank you.
Well, it doesn't work if they don't do that.
Yeah. Why doesn't it work if they don't stick their hands up?
Who knows? That's just the reason.
Blood flow. Then she finds Harry in a room, and he's like, hey, help me. And she's like,
You're not gonna attack me with a rock, are you?
How do I know it's you? And he's like, what are you talking about, old girl? And she's like, it's you.
Only you would be that chauvinistic.
Like, that's the first time she's ever smiled at him calling her old girl. And then she gets him out. Okay, so that's when they overhear, like, the beardy guy and the nurse are walking through, and they're, like, both just like, oh, boy, it sure does suck to be in these Earth clothes, right? Oh, can't wait to get out of this and into my Zygon uniform, or whatever. Like, they're just, like, two employees just chit-chatting about their evil plans. But then they leave, and they do that classic, Harry goes one way, and Sarah Jane, like, has to grab him and pull him the other way. Just small comedy bits. Love them.
Nice little piece of business.
So the Doctor and the Brig arrive at the library, at the Duke's library. Sarah Jane and Harry come out. So like, oh, cool. Then we had nothing to worry about. But the doctor like does this thing. He like for a half second seems like he's concerned that they may be Zygons. But then it just immediately like, nah, I'm just messing. Just want to say hi. And then runs down the hallway himself and immediately screams. And apparently gets taken by the Zygons, who come out and talk about their plans some to the Brig and Sarah Jane and Harry. And they're like, we've got the doctor, don't mess with us. The oil rigs were just a test, you don't know what's coming by. And they go back in. And the Brig's like, well, I guess we'll go bomb them. Is everybody cool with that?
I love the Brig. It's always like, blow it all up. That'll work. Even though it hasn't worked the last 50 times.
So he goes, and they start shooting bombs, and like they're just blowing up a lake, basically, which is fun to watch.
Right. I love that they actually like set off the explosion while there were birds near the lake, so you actually get the birds flying away.
And like the first bomb goes off, and then we cut inside the Zygon ship, and like the doctor does his, little Star Trek wobble, and he goes, must be the Brig. Then the ship raises off of the bottom of the lake and goes off into the air, which I actually thought was a pretty decent effect, especially when it's like just coming out of the water and there's water pouring off of it. Because I remember when it was started happening, I was like, all right, here comes the cheesy model effect. And then it didn't look cheesy. It looked pretty good. I was proud. I love Doctor Who. It's going to be my catchphrase. Oh, also it makes a terribly awful, like, loud noise. So terribly loud and awful that everybody in the show also knows it's terrible and loud. They're all just like, like covering their ears. And then they just watch it fly off into the sky, and that's the cliffhanger. It's the end of episode 3. We're now into episode 4, the final title. Here we go. Mine's the worst.
You might have me on this one, because I wasn't as proud of this one.
You go first this time.
Alright. Shipping damage.
Mine is Zygon Baby Zygon.
Alright.
A reference to Gone Baby Gone. So, there we go. That's, who do you think won, Tony?
I thought they were
Say
both
me.
adequate.
Tony, don't you realize that every episode needs a title?
I think she may agree, but maybe not. We may not be the ones that should title it.
I don't know. I think Donald Cotton had it right with the Mythmakers. They should all be puns.
Right? I love it.
I
that's
would
the
prefer
best
that
one.
they were all flowers that in no way had anything to do with the plot of the episode.
But yeah, there we go. That's the end of the title off. There is no winners, only losers. Man, whoa, Nessie was pretty good.
It was a good title.
Thank you.
So, the Zygons are going into hiding. Like, Sarah Jane and Harry are going to search the castle, see if they can maybe find something. Which Sarah Jane is like, I think I may have found something. Here's some interesting stuff. The Duke owns all this. The Duke's involved in all these things. And Harry's just like, this is boring. Stop. He literally takes it out of her hand and like, this is dumb. We're leaving. And then she's like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, what possible use could any of this knowledge have?
Which, considering how sometimes Doctor Who can be a little bit fillery, not within the, outside the realm of possibility that this was a pointless scene. But it does sort of come back up later.
The thing that she reads is that he was on, I forget what it's called, but he was basically on some energy board thing.
Science stuff.
Yeah.
But the ship lands and starts jamming communications. And the Doctor, meanwhile, is trying to pull a donut off of a wall.
Is that what it looked like to you?
Well, a donut with like an umbilical cord.
Yeah, I don't know. It looked more like a flower to me.
Yeah, I could see that. But it's like inside this tube, and he's like pulling it out, and it stretches, and then they like come in to check in on him, and he just lets it go, and it goes right back into the wall. It's so good. The set design is amazing here. And he's like, is this a social call? And they have a bit of a chat, and then the Zygon turns into the Duke. Surprise! The Doctor actually applauds it. Like, that's pretty good. Pretty good trick.
Neat parlor trick.
I mean, I've seen the faceless ones, but
Yeah. Oh god, he should have said that.
Then he sort of like also says, like, because the doctor's like, why do you have to keep the bodies? And he's like, oh, we have to keep the prints. The prints need to be refreshed regularly. Which I do think that does stick around. Which is a good reason to be like, I guess that's like why they don't just kill everybody.
Why you don't just kill people.
But most of the people they could have killed, they don't make duplicates of. So then they reestablish that, Zygons are coming in a few centuries, I think they say. And then they got to get this place cleaned up for their arrival. And then we get a bit of foreshadowing of reality. The Prime Minister calls the brig. And it's a lady, because he says ma'am, which at the time, there was not a female prime minister. But there would be.
Yeah, and this gets the fans all riled up about when the unit stories actually take place. Because there's this whole debate between whether they took place in the 70s or the 80s. Fights start about this kind of stuff. It's kind of amazing.
So far, I believe they've been fairly consistently in the future. I don't think they've done anything to really contradict that yet.
Well, the problem is that there are a lot of physical details that point it to being in the 70s, which you can just hand wave and say, well, that's when they were making it, so they couldn't, anticipate, what the 80s was going to look like. But there's going to be problems later, because they actually give a year later for one of the stories, and it's in the 70s, and that just throws everybody for a loop, so.
Yeah, from what I heard, it's something like the Brigadier got promoted before he was... it was a whole...
Before he could have started.
Yeah, saying when he became whatever would contradict that timeline. But, it's Doctor Who, timey-wimey,
happens.
wibbly-wobbly.
Writers forget when things happened.
But yeah, he's going to do some discreet but resolute action. Then the Doctor is left alone in his thing again and messes with the wall thing and touches another thing. He's doing some really technical stuff here.
But the fact that it's all organic makes it look like he's doing something really wrong.
So just a bunch of technical fondling happening. Highly technical.
These shapes that are both vaguely, tentacly and have holes in them at the same time. It's just, it's something wrong.
This is altogether uncomfortable. But he grabs one end, touches another thing, and then goes, ah! So... he's having a good time. But what that does is, I believe it gives a signal out to the brig, to unit. And they're like, oh, we gotta chase this signal down. That must be where the Doctor's at, where the ship landed.
And surprise, surprise, it's in a quarry.
Who would have guessed? But the Doctor passes out, and they assume he's dead, but he's not. He even sits up and goes, I'm alive! The Doctor finds the body chamber, proceeds to fondle that, and releases everybody. It opens, and then, the Zygons are coming. He's like, oh, everybody hide. And so he gets in the body chamber, too. And they just walk right by it. Another classic comedy bit.
Lack of peripheral vision is a problem for all Doctor Who monsters.
Hiding in plain sight, as we call it. But everybody gets out of the chamber. They go into a room, and there's a thing.
Oh, you are just nailing it right now.
Well, it's an alien spaceship. I don't know. It's a self-destructing thing.
It's another organic-looking thing, like every other organic-looking thing on the Zygon spaceship. And after a little fondling, the Doctor gets it to self-destruct.
And he's like, everybody run. So they all run out, and the thing blows up. Not before the Duke gets out of the ship. And he's heading off to the conference.
It takes out all the other Zygons who are on the ship, but the Duke got away.
Which, that was actually, you see him get out of the ship, he gets in the escape pod or whatever, I don't know, he just exits, and, you see him way off in the distance, it's basically him way off in the distance, but forced perspective makes it look like he's tiny, and he's running away from the ship, and I thought that was a really good forced perspective shot, because, it is definitely a model close to the camera and him way off in the distance, but they sold it really well. Way better than, that huge tank in Robot. So they need to go stop the fake Duke. So he's going to an energy conference in London on the... I don't know how to pronounce that word. I always mess it up. Thames?
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 The Thames.
Thames. It's a very hard word to pronounce.
Well, yeah, don't look at how it's spelled. Just listen to how they say it, because you're right. I don't get how they get Thames from that, but everybody calls it the Thames.
Because I want to say Thames.
Which would make sense, but a lot of British expressions and words don't make sense.
Oh, which I don't think we've ever said the name of this Zygon, which is Broton. He's a real bro Watch-A-Thon.
That is a great name.
Yeah, it's Broton. I think Bitten's a real Broton, if you ask me.
What's up? I'm Broton.
Leader of the Zygons and whatnot.
I'm imagining him with gold chains and stuff, huh?
Just sharing some brewskis with my fellow Brotons.
Broton under his ass.
So they confront him in the basement of whatever this building is. This is when the brig does the thing, and it actually works. He straight up shoots Broton, and Broton dies. It worked!
He got to solve something with bullets.
I'm so proud of him.
It really, this is the end of the Brigadier's character arc. That he was finally able to kill something with bullets, an alien with bullets, and so now he's just like, you know what, it's never gonna get any better than this, I'm retiring right now.
Done! But that is not the end of the serial, because we still have to deal with Nessie.
Right, because the mating call is in the building where the energy conference is. So Nessie's going to destroy it and all the people in it. Because there's people from all over the world there. And so it was supposed to make a big statement for the Zygons to show their power. But now with no Zygons, it's just going to make a really big mess.
So they gotta find the device. It's in the room somewhere. I believe it turns out to be in the doctor's pocket.
Yeah, Broton, put it in his pocket so that he'd make sure the doctor got killed.
So the doctor rushes outside, and Nessie shows up, and he's like, "Fetch!" and throws it into the river.
Not gonna attempt it.
I'm not even gonna try.
Here's what I absolutely love. They have a shot of Nessie making big chewing motions for a device that fits in, maybe as big as a finger. And giant Nessie is having to chew up this thing. And I'm like, no.
Also, it's a mating thing. So why is it eating it?
Don't ask questions.
We don't know about the mating habits of Nessies. Yeah, I don't want to know too much.
So, yeah, Nessie goes away. And, there's cars stuff driving by. That had to have been... I think they
People
do
saw that.
People saw it. But they make some reference, because then the next shot is basically them all walking through the woods to the TARDIS and, saying, it's covered up, it's fine. No one cares. Even the Duke, the real Duke, is like, yeah, I think I saw something, but it's hard to tell. Ha ha ha! Wink. They get to the TARDIS, and the doctor's like, all right, let's go. The brig's like, no thank you. And the doctor looks so sad. And then he's like, turns to Harry. Harry has some line. His last line is so unmemorable.
This is I think I'll sit this one out.
Well, he says something like, I'm going to take the train, or I'll stick to the train this time, or something like that.
Yeah, it's a very specific, brand name, I think, of the type of, public transportation, basically. He's like, I'm going to stick to that from now on. And the doctor's like, all right. He just doesn't really seem to care. But then turns to Sarah Jane, and she's like, He's like, really? No?
Yeah, then he pouts.
And then she's like, all right, fine, as long as we're going to London, for real. And he's like, oh yeah, definitely. Sure. I mean, our next serial is called Planet of Evil, so...
That could be London. You don't know.
That's true. It was Earth all along!
Yeah. Big shock for everybody. They don't go to London.
But, they turn us out of there, and, that's basically the end of the serial. There's some little joke at the end about, getting money back for return tickets. Yeah,
because the brig's Scottish, and Scottish people are supposed to be frugal. So it was like, why didn't you return or get their tickets from them so you could, return them and, get a refund? Ah, ha, 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 laugh track.
Freeze frame, credits. That's it. That's the end of Terror of the Zygons. We're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll come back for final thoughts. Let's hear a little promo for the 42 cast. What do you say?
I think that's a great idea.
I knew you'd like it.
Temporal anomaly detected on Earth 2017. Is it the Doctor? No, it is a human using the number 42. They have the ultimate answer. They are having civil discussions about television, film, comics, books, and video games. Where is the fan rage? This is a threat to the Daleks. We must exterminate them. Humans must be hostile to each other so that the Daleks may rule supreme. Exterminate. Exterminate.
The 42 cast. Bad for Daleks, good for humanity.
And we're back. Toni, do you know what time it is?
It is roughly 9 o'clock.
Roughly 10. Close enough.
Shoot, really?
Yeah, you were way behind.
It's 9 o'clock for me.
Tony, it's time for...
The end of the podcast.
Well, yeah, but at the end of the podcast, we do final thoughts, so...
Oh, wow.
Final thoughts.
Since you're the guest, you get to go first. Nathan, what are your final thoughts?
I feel like this is the last unit story, and for that reason, it does make me a little bit sad. You know, we will see Benton again, which is good, but we won't see the Brigadier again for a long time, and it kind of feels like this is the end of an era. I am glad they kind of gradually phased Unit out instead of just, you know, having them end, and it is nice that the Brigadier did get to finish his character arc, so, you know, there's that. This is also, like, kind of the start of the Fourth Doctor's era, though, because, you know, Robot was a holdover from the Pertwee era, in that it was Terrence Dix who was the script editor who did the writing, and it was very much felt like a Pertwee story. And then we got a bunch of returning monsters. So the arc in space was the only one that really was something really new. So I feel like this is where Hinchcliffe and Holmes really hit their stride, and the show gets a little darker, not too dark, and it definitely maintains its humor because Tom makes sure that he does. And I think that's there here. I mean, we get Tom settling into the role, which is good. I think his relationship with Sarah Jane is really good here. I love the pouty scene at the end and her caving in, because it's very much like a lot of how their relationship goes. And even though the Zygons aren't the brightest monster, and it's not necessarily my favorite story of the Fourth Doctor era, I feel like it works. They definitely get sort of the horror elements, you know, in the story, and, you know, it's a pretty good episode. So yeah, I don't know why the Zygons weren't used again, because I think the whole idea of creatures that can look like anybody is a pretty good idea that they could have used again, but oh well.
Yeah, well, they use them in New Who, so...
Right, no, I mean, yeah, I bent in the classic run, but yeah.
Somebody was like, yeah, there is potential, we gotta use it.
Well, yeah, that and Big Finish, I mean, they've gone back to the well and everything. Somebody, I just saw they just made a list of, like, all the things that Big Finish hasn't reused, and it's like 6 things from Classic Who that Big Finish, like the Sensorites, you know, stuff like that, you know. It's like, they haven't figured out a way to use the Sensorites yet, but they will, given time.
So, Tony, what do you think of this serial?
I'm mostly just going to miss Unit. I think that period of time where the Doctor is kind of stuck on Earth, I think we spent a lot of that time being like, when are they going back to space? I miss space. But it's the characters that are there are really good, and I will miss them. I like kind of the family dynamic that's there at Unit, of having, you know, these characters who are there and they're sort of doing their own thing, and they're just also with you. And I'll miss them. It's a pretty decent serial. I am really glad that the Zygons have been brought back in New Who, because I feel like it's one of those ideas where, like, there's a lot to them. There's a lot of interesting things that you can do with them, and the execution of them is just okay here. I wouldn't say it was bad. Like, the design of them's amazing. The set design, you know, for everything related to them is great. And the serial's, like, pretty good, you know? Those are my final thoughts.
Yeah, just piggybacking on what you said. The body swapping thing isn't as vital an element of it as it could have been. Like, it's mostly focused on Nessie. So yeah, I feel like maybe if they bumped up the, like, body swapping aspect a little bit more, or body snatching rather. But yeah, I liked it a lot. I thought it was fun. I actually, like, saying that this was originally supposed to be a finale, it definitely feels more like a finale. It's definitely way better than the actual finale of last season. But, like, you know, just, like, it bookending Robot with, you know, Unit and Unit. We meet Harry Sullivan, and we leave Harry Sullivan here. It's very, everything's coming full circle. Harry, I liked him, but yeah, even in this serial, he doesn't get a whole lot to do, and most of what the interesting things that happens with him, it's not really him, it's a Zygon, because he mostly just gets shot and then fumbles around a spaceship.
You will see Harry one more time.
Oh, good. I kind of have, like, a respect for the companions who, like, get out on their own terms, who are like, that was fun, but also really dangerous, so I'm done now. Bye. Have a nice life.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the kidnapped companions, because he didn't know what was going on. The Doctor just, you know, has him go into the TARDIS, and then he just takes off. Yeah, I totally get it. I mean, Harry never signed up for this ride, and once he's home, he's like, I'm done.
He's just like, I haven't had human food in so long. Actually, I'm still curious, like, what the time span is, because pretty much from the end of Robot to the end of, so the beginning of this serial is all one continuous event, pretty much. I'm wondering how much, like, real time that is for
like how
Harry
much
Sullivan.
sleeping has happened.
Yeah, I want him to get some rest. But yeah, I love Nessie, and I love getting to see Benton and Brigg one more time. Yeah.
How do you feel about Doctor Who?
I love Doctor Who. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. It's fun. It's a good. I'm excited to keep going. And again, I always love 4-parters. 4-parters are so good.
It'll be mostly 4-parters from now on. They got a bigger budget, so they're able to do more. Same number of episodes, but they're able to do more serials with the same number of episodes. So now it'll only be 1 6-parter per season.
Yeah, from what I heard, Robert Holmes was not a big fan of 6-parters because he's like, it's mostly just filler. I'm like, yeah, thank you.
But funny enough, he writes the best 6-parters.
Irony.
When he's forced to do it, he does it really well.
Not that 6-parters can't be good. There's been some good 6-parters. There's been a great 10-parter.
Yeah.
Oh, the War Games was so good. But yeah, this was great, and I liked it a lot, and the design is great. The characters are good. It's a solid serial. Like, I wouldn't say it's like my favorite serial of all time, but it's a good, solid, fun time. It's a good time.
It's a good piece of business.
It's a good piece of business. So, Nathan, do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, so the 42 cast is actually going to start back again after a hiatus. So by the time this episode drops, I should have a new episode up. I'm actually going through a bit of my backlog and recording, so it's actually an episode about Thor Ragnarok. But hey, I mean, it's never too late to talk about a fun movie. So check that out. And going to be going back to regular updates with the 42 cast. Getting those episodes out on time. Hopefully, after some real life stuff took me out of it for a while. But yeah, that's it for me right now.
Fun. I'm still looking forward to the episodes I'm on.
They're coming. It's just with TV show episodes, I only really prioritize them once the next season comes out. So I want to get them out before that. But yeah, especially for Inhumans, that's not going to happen. So
Thank God.
Yeah.
You don't have to watch them.
I do, though. I do.
Toni, it's all connected. They've told me it's all connected, so I have to watch everything with the MCU label.
You should understand that. You like Dirt Gently. It's all connected.
It's all connected. Oh, man. That was a show that was canceled before its time.
All right, so now I'm going to do my spiel.
Do it.
If you like this episode, you can check out more on Watch-A-Rassilon.com and be sure to rate and comment on our iTunes. It helps us out a lot. If you'd like to help us out even more, you can go to Watch-A-Rassilon.com/support, and there you'll find a link to our Patreon page, which you can get to just by going to patreon.com/Watch-A-Thon, and there you can donate a monthly amount to get all kinds of rewards like day early episodes, uncut video of the podcast records, bonus episodes. We've started doing that for the ESO Network.
Yeah.
The ESO Network Patreon gets them first, and then we upload them a week later. I've recorded one of those, so that'll be fun. It's the Dalek book. And also on our Patreon, we're doing live streams, so you can watch the episodes with us. Also on our support page is a link to our Amazon wishlist where you can sponsor an episode of the podcast by purchasing the corresponding serial on DVD for us. We'll mention you in the podcast and put your name on our Friends of Rassilon page. Speaking of, special thanks again to Matt Golden for sponsoring this episode.
Thanks, Matt.
You can follow him on Tumblr at mgoldentumbles.tumblr.com. That's Tumbles without an E because it's Tumblr. Tune in next time when we talk about Planet of Evil. We don't have any guests on that. It's just going to be the two of us. Just the two of us. So yeah, come check it out with us. Keep calm and wrestle on.
Bye, friends.
Bye.
Was that bang big enough for you, Brigadier?
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping through Amazon.com or the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.